All right, can you see my screen okay? Or is it just me?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, well, thanks again for having us and allowing us to present on the service assessment for the December 10th, 11th tornadoes of 2021. This event affected a large portion of both central and southern region with large impacts across a vast expanse of area. So, and somewhat rare event because it occurred in December, so a late season event. So a service assessment team was put together to explore this event and see if there were any findings that could be found from it. So I want to highlight our team, an outstanding group of folks here that contributed to this report. So definitely a lot of kudos goes out to everyone there, including the co-lead there, Mark Fox, who I believe is on the call as well. So thank you to everyone involved. Just a few key stats from the event to start off. There were 71 tornadoes that occurred across 8 states, and that resulted in 95 known fatalities. This does make it the deadliest tornado event on record for the month of December. It's estimated that the financial impact was around $18 billion after all is said and done. SPC did issue a total of 43 mesoscale discussions, and that was the largest single day to date, including, I believe, around 20 on a single shift, which is quite impressive for one shift to do that many MCDs. 2 of the more notable tornadoes that occurred was the Mayfield EF4 tornado and the Edwardsville, Illinois EF3 tornado that impacted the Amazon warehouse in that area. And the longest track tornado was 165.6 miles. That was the one that impacted Mayfield, Kentucky, and that is the longest track recorded for a December tornado. This is just an overall event timeline for the things that occurred during the event. There was another severe event that occurred previously to this one a few days before, so offices were kind of in severe weather mode leading up to this, so they were able to message out a little bit further in advance, with messaging starting as early as Monday, December 10th, out ahead of this event. But you can see the timeline there with quite a bit of messaging and DSS occurring out ahead of this, and then the series of events that occurred during the event, including both power loss, comms loss, and generator loss for WFO Paducah, which necessitated Springfield backing them up and doing an outstanding job providing service backup, including issuing tornado emergencies during the backup operation period. And then the damage assessment beginning thereafter, with some challenges noted as well through that time frame. So here's the broad overview of the things that we're going to cover. We're not going to cover every finding and recommendation from the report, but these we'll certainly highlight some things that came out of it that are more notable, and then you can certainly dive into the report once it's published for further details. So we'll start off by kind of looking at the series of outlooks the day of the event. So things did pretty much ramp up very quickly as we got into the day of the event. We can see a slight risk being issued about 59 hours ahead of the tornado outbreak occurring, with a moderate risk of being issued about 4 hours before the onset. So you can see there 61 tornadoes reported, at least in the preliminary. We did note a few more after that, and then a wide variety of severe weather reports from wind and hail as well through a large swath of that outlook area. So let's dig into the findings here. We'll start off by from a few things from SPC. SPC has been experimenting here for the last few years with some machine learning technology and how that can assist them with issuing outlooks further in advance. So they'll continue to explore that technology, and I know we'll hear more about that on a talk here during the seminar or the symposium. But they've always kind of, one struggle or challenge, I should say, with this is kind of balancing the potential impacts of an event with the uncertainty that far out in advance. So they have made strides with incorporating machine learning into this decision making, so they continue to do that, and also continue to provide that meso beta scale MCDs as best as they can through the events, and how best to message that to the WFO to communicate that with downstream partners, providing IDSS to those partners, especially in these high impact events, most notably for the Mayfield, Kentucky tornado that was highlighted well in advance of it impacting the town through the use of these meso-beta scale MCDs. Shifting gears to the weather forecast offices, tremendous messaging coming out of the WFOs as well. One thing that was noted, though, that a lot of the messaging was tied to IDSS playbooks, and when ramping up quickly for severe weather events such as this case, we do need to somewhat deviate from those playbooks to maybe highlight our message earlier in advance. So maybe adapting the playbooks to say, what you know when you know it mentality is something we can look into to provide a little bit more flexibility with messaging. There was, again, a tremendous amount of IDSS provided, but maybe a little bit different from office to office. So again, just focusing on consistent and repeatable from shift to shift and office to office is important when providing these decision support services, especially when we get into high impact time, that watch to warning gap phase, and really especially when emergencies are issued. We had Paducah text messaging partners directly in advance of that tornado impacting their counties, which is a tremendous service that we can provide. But we just probably need to baseline that and make sure that's consistent from office to office in these services that we're providing. And then we also noted that the tornado that impacted Edwardsville, Illinois, the Amazon warehouse, there was not a lot of tornado safety information and guidelines available out ahead of this event. So maybe developing something that's specific to kind of large venues and large facilities would be beneficial to the agency. Taking a look at the regional operations centers, they did a tremendous job in coordinating, communicating with offices throughout the event. So one idea that came out of this was to develop or update the regional action plan with kind of a one-stop shop of all the actions that possibly could be necessitated during this kind of large-scale event, both before, during, and after the event. While the coordination and communication was tremendous, a lot of it was found to be done a little bit ad hoc at times. So just kind of having that regional action plan up to speed and shored up a little bit more could be beneficial. Also kind of anticipating some of the needs from the forecast offices, whether that be through mutual aid, media service request, regional web pages and GIS services, just kind of having all that documented and ready to go was a finding that came out of this. So again, tremendous job by everyone throughout the event in that coordination phase. Focusing a little bit further on the mutual aid aspect, again, you can see the map here on the screen, a tremendous amount of mutual aid that was coordinated by the ROC and provided by various offices across both regions. So that was tremendous. And especially the remote mesoanalysis initiative. So that was proven to be a tremendous benefit as well to the forecast offices. So just kind of continuing to focus on those types of initiatives and providing those as a consistent service would be a nice focus moving forward. Again, comprehensive pre, during, and post-event mutual aid that can be established with better guidelines and just kind of baselining those services so that they're consistent from office to office and region to region. And then one thing to focus on is expanding the Savvy program. We focus on mutual aid. That's certainly a nationwide program that can be beneficial in finding severe weather reports for our offices as well. Taking a look at the service or the science guidance and training aspect of this, keeping up to speed with the severe weather operation team and CWIP training to infuse the latest science is always important. We did find that warning teams during the warning operations was tremendously beneficial to the forecasters. So having several people looking at the event when making those warning decisions tended to be very beneficial. Again, we kind of mentioned this for SPC, but also for the forecast offices. There continues to be additional probabilistic and statistical and machine learning approaches that are emerging and available to the forecast offices. So, just keeping up to speed with the latest on those services and and tools that are available so that we can continue to recognize these events in a longer lead time to provide better services. And then we also found that there was a little bit of while the tornado emergencies were issued and services were provided well out in advance of these tornadoes, that's not necessarily a routine thing that forecasters do. So just continuing to practice issuing tornado emergencies, that's just a high stress environment. So muscle memory can go a long way with getting those things out on time. One important thing that we found throughout this event was an emphasis on critical incident stress management, especially for events that have a high fatality rate. Those that are going out on damage surveys, just making sure that we can provide them services to service any stress management that people are going through during these events. So this was certainly highlighted and will continue to be highlighted as an agency to make sure we provide those resources to those individuals that are both doing damage surveys and involved in the event as well, issuing warnings and services through these highly impactful events. And I'll wrap up here with IT and infrastructure and systems. We did mention that there was a power outage at WFO Paducah during the event, as well as the generator that went out as well, and Springfield picked up operations after that and continued to issue the tornado emergencies through the event. So just continuing to practice those backup operations. We did find that the radar ingest was lost during this as well. So they did have to turn to GR analysts and some private forecasting software packages to analyze radar data when they couldn't access it through AWIPS. There was a little bit of frustration with using Survey 123 app, so just making sure everyone is familiar and trained with how to use the application and the different aspects of it. A lot of it came with poor cell service when they're out doing damage surveys, so struggling with how to submit, how to put in, input data points and things like that when you don't have service, cell service out in rural areas. And then also one last thing that offices did that was tremendous was planning out ahead with establishing Google Meets and Google chat rooms when NWS chat went down. So that was planned out ahead, and we're able to transfer the chat services over to Google Meet so that they could continue to communicate with their partners throughout the event. This will hopefully be rectified with our move to Slack out in the future, but until then, this is certainly a best practice moving forward. And with that, I will certainly have time for a few questions, Allie. The report is coming soon. We're still adjudicating comments, just a few left, but hopefully that will be out soon for everyone to read. So thank you.
Thanks, Derek. Feel free to raise your hand or ask a question. So Derek, since many folks might not be familiar with how a regional assessment is conducted, can you just give us a little bit of the process that you, Mark, and your team had to go through to do the regional assessment?
Yeah, absolutely. So we got together, I believe, in February of last year and just started discussing as a team on how we wanted to approach the assessment. We ended up deciding on interviewing all the participating or affected WFOs and doing one-on-one interviews with those offices. Each office did provide a written report to kind of to jumpstart things and get a lot of information collected in one spot. So we did talk to every WFO, the ROCs, and then we did interview the mayor of Mayfield, Kentucky, to get her perspective as well. So just kind of working through those interviews, collecting that information, those reports from the offices, and then we just kind of divvied up the writing responsibilities, coming up with the findings and recommendations from those avenues.
Thanks.
Hey, Derek, this is Randy. I have a question. So,
hey, Randy.
With your findings and recommendations, how are those followed up on as far as implementation and that sort of thing?
Yeah, great question. I believe that'll probably fall towards however the recommendation and findings are worded. So if they were, most of these are probably regional in scope, so probably fall in the regional headquarters to follow up on these. If they tend to be national in scope, we'll probably reach out to those national surface program teams or whomever to kind of look into them. But I assume they'll probably be managed by the regional headquarters, and then we'll kind of divvy out duties from there.
Great, thanks.
All right, Derek. Thank you for presenting. I'm not seeing any other questions or raised hands at this time.